morning and welcome back everyone to the Day 2 conference on Neuroscience and Buddhist Psychology. For the first session of today's, we have sleep and mental health. For that, may I call upon Professor Jens Husen. He'll be chairing this session. And for the speakers, we have Professor Birendra M. Malik from JNU and Dr. Chimi Dogala and Dr. Anita Dutane. May I request them to please come up on the dais. Professor Birendra Malik will be speaking on neurobiology of sleep in health and disturbed states, and Dr. Chimi Dogala will be speaking on Tibetan traditional medicine perspective on sleep and mental health, and Dr. Anita Dudane will be speaking on psycho-neuroimmunology and mental health. Now may I request Dr. Jens Husen to proceed with the session. Thank you.
Hello and good morning everybody also from my side. Pleasure to see you all back here this morning. We'll start our session with the talk by Dr. Birendra Malik. And Dr. Malik is a full professor of neurobiology at the School of Life Sciences at Gulmohar University, JNU, and served as a dean during 2013 to 2015. He started REM sleep research in India and initiated sleep research at JNU. He has delivered over 200 invited lectures within the country and also abroad. And he has published 130 research papers, book chapters. He's a first-class scientist, I would call it, to make it short, and I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Husen, and thanks to Professor Sion and Gese Damdul, and to good morning to each and one and all to all of you to be here on the Sunday morning. And thanks for this nice introduction. See, I am a basic scientist, and I work in neurobiology of sleep mechanism. The time I have for about 30 minutes now. I was here yesterday and I found, and I work in JNU, which is, you can see here, this is the building in the School of Life Sciences here in JNU, Delhi, for those who do not know about it. Now, the subject that we are talking about, it has bearing of many subjects, starting from neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, physiology, cognition, consciousness, spirituality, theology. And now here we have the audience, right from the young, with some specialized experts on specialized fields. So yesterday when I was here, I found we need some integration of these. And therefore, I changed my way of talking, though it is from my heart. I do want to discuss only these issues, but it is not too often an opportunity to talk like this. Therefore, I will try in my most humble way to bring in the basics and how can we approach which will be there at the end. We are talking about, all these are fundamentally come under knowledge. And what we talk about knowledge, what I found in the Vedic literature, and particularly here Kautilya's Arthasastra, those who have studied, that knowledge has these 4 branches: philosophy, Vedas, economics, and science of governance. though there are differences in views by great scholars like Brihaspati and Manu, so I'm not going to detail about it. There may be other scholars, forgive my ignorance. We are talking at this moment about the materialistic knowledge, which in a broader sense, this is my view, which is under Vedas with 4 types of Vedas, fundamentally 3 and going for the 4th. Now, if we talk about this, how did the knowledge progress? Usually it will progress first the concept, the philosophy. Then comes, even if we get it, something what to do, we need to express it. What is fundamentals of expression? That is to say what we are thinking. And thinking, if it has to be expressed, it is like a comparison of what we know, what we do not know. For example, if I have to say right, I cannot go left. Means there is some image of right, whichever language, Spanish, German, we can say. If we go the other way, we say it's different. We say insane or diseased. So that is, comparison comes number crunching. That's the fundamental of mathematics. Then comes the physical property, then comes chemical property. Even if we combine all this chemistry into a test tube, life doesn't come. So that is beyond what we are talking about. So I am trying to say, what we are discussing here is enormous complexity. Now, what we are doing here, fundamentally, we may have an laboratory-generated experimental scientist, like in a very small way, me and many others, including who are doing philosophy and all. So, as an experimental scientist, experimental science attempts to find correlation and causal relationship between structure function. So here what we are discussing, on one hand, the structure of a molecule, which ultimately go into brain, and we are talking about what the spirituality and which we don't understand. Therefore, we are going in a stepwise manner, and where do we compare? So we have to have that vastness. And that would depend on, therefore I have highlighted observer. It depends on what we observe and then try to interpret. And that all depends on the existing knowledge here, prevalent existing knowledge. What prevalent existing knowledge was 1,000 years back, we have to learn from them, does not mean that that has to be applicable here in totality. Some will be there, some may or may not be there. That is our job as so-called intellectual class of people, to send the message. And that cannot be isolated from the development of instrumentation, other knowledge from the nature. So let's see, what are the fundamentals of different things? These are some of them: consciousness, thought, self, life, and may or may not be many others. Therefore, Francis Crick, the Nobel laureate, had said, there is no scientific study more vital to man than understanding one's own brain, because our entire view of the universe depends on it. So brain somehow is disturbed. Our interpretation, our observation, and all these will differ. Therefore, scientists from any walk, not necessarily the lab-confined scientists, be it mathematicians to philosophers to linguists, they have all jumped into understanding neuroscience and going into consciousness. So what is consciousness? I have defined here what I have seen in Google or dictionary. But the question then comes, is consciousness omnipresent? Well, that is a much, much wider question. If we talk about quantum mechanics, if we talk about the physicists in that sense, they will say molecules have that type of consciousness. But we are talking about living system. And not only living system, our knowledge is further restricted. We are talking about those systems where there is brain at this moment. I'm not discounting others. I'm talking about my ignorance. Therefore, if it has to be there like that, Then we have to understand what is brain, and then the behavior as such. So ideally, the studies need to be done on humans. But there are limitations. If there are limitations, what do? We cannot sit idle. We have to work with those limitations, but there are risks. Therefore, we used model system. The model system can be inanimate, can be animate. And therefore, it can be done even in an animal system, but choosing models is a challenge. And I will give you some data from the lab, right from cell molecule to coming to mathematical modeling based on those data, and then come to how, at the end, at least one aspect which we can try to understand, if possible, through discussion. Thus, consciousness, we need to know the brain structure and function. Now, grossly, quote unquote, the consciousness will have three branches: wake, sleep, and dream. That is what classically we say, without going into whether the universe has a consciousness and all. But if we have to understand in these small baby steps, I would talk it in that sense, baby step, to understand that, because through the brain, we have to understand when there is no other input and how things are coming, as well as when the inputs are coming. So most of our non-external input related conscious type of thing we get in our dream, and all of us have experienced that. So if we can try to understand that, that is the window for us to look into what could be the consciousness and how to go about it. So my lab focuses on these experimental aspects. What is REM sleep? Why has it come evolved in the system? What is its function and how to go about it? Now the question then comes, what is this dreaming? Such a fundamental. Where does it exist? Now, these are extremely difficult questions. Therefore, first let us understand what is a substrate of dreaming. Where does it happen? It happens in the brain. Without brain, at least we do not know within our limited brain resources understanding. So yesterday also there were many discussions like this, brain and what happens there. This is, I would put it as an analogy, magnet and magnetism. The thought process is that, but it cannot happen without the brain or when the neurons are not there. Like without the magnet, where do we get this magnetism? So if that is there, let's understand what is the brain in a very simplistic manner within the limited time that I have. If this is the brain, if we cut across, we will get the neurons, the basic units. And those neurons connect with each other. And one of the most important things in the brain is the neurons have electrical signaling. And if this electrical signaling has a field potential that we know of, that is vibrating all around, and people like Dr. Hewson and others, they are trying to develop gadgets to catch them. That is one aspect of it, and this is how we will understand. But remember, if there is an atomic change or molecular change, or suppose we are cooking, if the ingredient is bad, if the potato or the rice that we eat, obviously the ultimate product will not be good. So we need to know how is the neuronal property, because that ultimately will bring the brain as such. So therefore, here these are book picture and how does things work. And these are the picture where we culture the neurons and go ahead and see how the neurons develop, grow, make connections, receptors, and all sorts of things, which I will not deal with. Having said this, now if you have to understand, sleep, waking, and consciousness, what we say, that is behavior. All of us can say that we are awake. But then if we are sitting here with an anesthetized person, whether one is anesthetized, sleeping, dead, we would not know. Therefore, the experimental scientist depends on objective criteria. What is objective criteria? The criteria are that anybody sees, will say it is this. That is what it comes here when we talk about spirituality. Why did Ramakrishna could see, Vivekananda could see, Dalai Lama could see? which I cannot. So there is that type of thing which we have to. But if we cannot reach to that level, let us step again as a baby step. The scientists could find the brain where there is the neuron and there is electrical signaling. Can we record? That started around 1920s after the invention of galvanometer. That is what Hewson yesterday said. He showed Hans Berger. So this is what is the recording. This is from the cat. Why I am showing this? The model system. If I cannot record there and go into deeper, first thing I have to say that the model is behaving similar like humans. So here you get similar type of brain waves, muscle activity, PGO waves, and then eye movements. Based on that, you have defined. And it was very interesting that it is only 1950s, about 60 years back. Aserinsky identified it is there. And during that time, it was correlated with Dement and Juve. Juve passed out just 20 days back. That generation is gone, that which is known as REM sleep. This is in the rat. That is rapid eye movement sleep. During sleep, the eyes are moving, and then most of the dreams occur. That is what objectively. But we do not know what the content of dream. The science doesn't know as yet. One doesn't know even how things work. So in my own way, I do little bit experiment on that, not for the dream, the state when it comes. And mind the word, most of the dreams occur, not all. Others can occur at other times. Now, if you have this EEG, for example, here, this is how the brain generates. You can do multiple type of analysis, like Hewson had shown, Sion had shown, many others were doing. So we also do in certain manners, like this is a complex wave pattern. You can do empirical decomposition of the wave pattern like this, the wave which has been distributed into 10 types, and then you can divide, and then you can also see, for example, how does this power and their wrapping system does what in physics jargon it says. And here, some of you may not be able to see this at a distance. There are, with different sleep, different types of anesthesia. See, one of them, green and the blue, it goes in two different directions. Both of them are anesthetics. One is ketamine, one is pentobarbital, of course in animal system. Because unless we do that, there are limitations you cannot just use in humans. Would any of you like to be a guinea pig? No. That way, are we selfish? Yes, we are selfish. But for a greater cause to use with all due respect to the animal system. We can also come down to mathematical formula, which I'll tell you later. So, if we have to continue our studies, and if it is in the brain, how does neuroscience knowledge evolve? Classically, it evolved based on first transaction studies, then gradually you have gone into lesion. These are physiological neuroscience jargons, stimulation, lesion, blocking, chemical, cellular activity, then molecular, all these one by one does. For example, it was in 1935 and 37, which was shown if you cut the brain, this is in cat, cut the brain here. Sorry, this battery is going down. Is there no other pointer? I have a fresh batteries there. I'm sorry for this. So here, they cut here in one system, and there is another animal you cut here, and then it was identified. This is here, which is called brain stem reticular activity, which gives our brain so-called at a level that we can, the EEG changes, and thereby the wakefulness and the other things are working. Excuse me. Thank you. Okay. Once it is there, as I said, from those, then you go for chemical, because neurons work through chemical, I showed you. And then how does, at the cellular level, it works. There are neurons, for example, here, this is REM on, like we have switch. In the brain also, there are, of course, we can debate like that. Yesterday we talked, that is true. is any knowledge or any information contained only in one neuron or one type of areas in the brain? No, there are debates, and how do they connect? That certainly has to be studied. But grossly, there are neurons which work as a switch. If you damage, like if those are damaged which are responsible for heart activity, like cerebral stroke where the heart is gone, or if some part is damaged, this finger will not move. If some areas of neurons are damaged, this hand will not move. These are there. So there are neurons which are known as REM sleep on. Like this here, these neurons are active only during REM sleep. These lines, as you can see here, these are very difficult studies, extremely hard studies. So out of billions of neurons, you are seeing one neuron. Like that, there are thousands of neurons. Similarly, there are other neurons which are REM off. I'm sorry, you cannot see there. These neurons, see, these are active here, which is more clear, this is. But it is not active during REM sleep. This was known when I was a student. This was identified in the mid-70s, early 80s. So when I started my independent lab in late 80s, early 90s, so I was interested in this. So initially it was proposed that the connections will be like this. This is REM off, this is REM on. This McCarley was who identified, he was postdoc. We lost him just about a month back, suddenly, a month or two back. So this was known as a student, but somewhere it didn't fit into my knowledge. And I had some questions, so I'm not going into detail, but I will say what happened. We proposed that it has to be like this. There has to be an interneuron, in jargon of biology it is said, which is GABA. And that is the model which is going on now. Then we showed there are other types of connections which are regulating REM sleep. Whatever I'm showing, these are my models. Then we showed that how there are neurotransmitters, receptors who are inducing which area of the brain. Remember, they are ultimately talking about REM sleep will come or not. And then whatever we are thinking of. Then we showed how wakefulness is modulating this structure or these neurons. Then we showed how the sleep is also modulating. Why is it coming at this time? And ultimately, this is the model which is prevalent at this time, and this is no less than in progress neurobiology, and that too in the cover page. And if you see this, how does it work? These are the neurons which are active during waking. Oh, sorry, here, this is waking, where these neurons are active. See, they are fast active. Gradually, when you go to sleep, see, these are slowing down, active, but slows down. But these sleep, there are sleep areas in the brain which becomes active. Then when you go to REM sleep, see, this is totally shut off, and this was totally shut off earlier. This starts being active. Don't worry, I'm not making you neuroscientists just in one lecture. But just to get the idea how things are working in the brain, and based on this, we model that this has during what happens during wake, during sleep, during REM sleep. Then we model them in a mathematical way, because sometimes you cannot do in biology, and then you have to work it out. So the same model which I showed you, using those data, we have used just if those who might be interested, therefore I thought I will show this. Here, then those neurons, how will they work? And then what is happening? I'm not killing an animal. I'm not saying somebody is dreaming. But we will be able to say that when this neuron is active, when that is not active, and with multiple complexities. I'm not going to go into detail of this. But then essence is, we can talk about in disease and disorder, including how evolution of this system has happened, why this neuron has evolved. So I'm looking for another physics or maths interested student. This was done with a physics student who did PhD with me. And this is how these red lines that you are getting, that means those REM on neurons are active, which is not active when this area, when the waking is there. So normal state, we are not getting that type of dreaming state. That is normal. But one can happen in a disorder. And another case, if somehow, so-called with our practice, we can reduce that, other activities, and we can come up with, probably we can induce that dream state. Probably great Maharishis could do something like that. The problem is it is difficult to do it in animals because I do not know what the animal is talking to me. This is the limitation of biology at this moment. Okay, so with this, next let us move if we are... If it is so, then what we have studied, that these neurons which stop activity, which is coming. Now, if there is no REM sleep, be it disorder or any other, or if you can induce, we have seen that if a neuron is active, that releases this chemical, which is the noradrenaline at this moment. So if there is no REM sleep, that noradrenaline should be flooding the brain. That is what we have seen, we have hypothesized. Then that should be the cause of different disorder or any other state that we might think of. Then we proved that yes, indeed, the noradrenaline level is increasing in the brain, but there are variations. There are most of the areas it increases. The dotted line, the red one, is a normal. The continuous line is after deprivation in the animal. This increase, that increase. But here in hippocampus, it decreases. That's the different physiological studies which we are working. We are not going into. But as you know, the cells have gene that then produces the factory for these transmitters. So if it has to be a continuous process, and the disorder has to continue for a long time in a complex chronic case, the gene had to be affected. This is what we have shown, that even after deprivation, how the gene is regulated so that the noradrenaline is increasing in the system that maintains this so-called disordered state. And if that is there, I showed you how the neuron will behave. I showed you the mathematical thing. I showed you all these happening. So that will change in the brain. Then how is it happening? These are the intracellular mechanism. This one slide, that is at least 5 PhDs, average 5 years or 25 man-years work. So, summarizing this, I'm not going to bother you with this, but I'm just saying this is how at the cell level to gene level, how the behavior of the cell to behavior of a person will affect. Now, if it is so, does it really affect the physical structure of a neuron? These are our latest studies. If the light can be put off here, you can see this would give a, well, I don't see it is moving. It will show a movie. I have another one. So here, these neurons, see, the neurons have many branches and they connect. After deprivation, they are breaking down. These are also very tedious. We take out the brain, slice it, then see under 300 micrometer how they have gone. A neuron can make thousands of synapses. We counted each of them. And see, after deprivation, they are all fragile and broken down. But if we block those noradrenaline which I showed, that is tending to come back, or this is prevented. Now, if that is there, what is the use of REM sleep? Why did nature create it? As of now, there is no disorder or altered state where REM sleep is not affected. Therefore, we need to know how does the neuron work. And if the neuron is working and how do they make connections, I cannot see it in a brain, in a system. So we developed primary culture of neurons. We took out the chick, we developed the chick from the egg, hatch them in the lab, take out those neurons, then trying to see how the neurons are growing and making synapses, contacts. Yeah, so it will make a synaptic contacts. It has to make here movie. Just to show you, this is how a neuron grows. They crawl together and then come. This is happening in our brain, all of us. And then the synapse is formed. And once this is there, that will be responsible for our thought process. If there is a disturbance here, things will not work. So if that is there, What happens in disorder? This is at the central state where locus coeruleus is noradrenergic system, which is REM off that we talked about. You talk any other disorder, which will be more clear here. These neurons, they get input from different neurotransmitters, from environment, from heart, from our thought process, and they project. So if these are disturbed, you are getting different types of disorder. You can go to specifics which you are interested in. Now, if that is there, since the time is short, let us talk about, so what? What is that we need to know? So now we come to philosophy. I'll take another 2-3 minutes. I don't know how much time. I hope I will be allowed. Okay, I think I will finish. So modern science classifies 3 states: wake, sleep, and dream sleep. But if we go back to ancient literature, Vedic, in the Prashna Upanishad, they talk about 6 profound states. 6 questions, where the 4th being for waking, dream, sleeping. There they are talking about a 4th state, which is called Turiya. Now, can there be a marriage between them, or what the great philosophers had said? So that is a philosophy. I have to show it if possible. Now, when I was trying to understand, I showed you this graph. If there is, what we talk about it physiologically, present knowledge we know, from wake one goes to sleep, then goes to REM sleep. From REM sleep one can go to wake. From non-REM sleep it can go to wake. But there is no way that wake to REM sleep in a normal state it goes. It does not, normally in physiology. Then how does it happen? What should happen? Thereby I thought, so I gave this first thing to my idea is a spoke model, but then I discounted it, it doesn't work. And I have written this in the REM sleep book. Well, the first REM sleep book is mine, which is in 1999 from Marcel Decker, and then comes in from Cambridge in 2011. So this is how you will get it in 3rd chapter. I have written all this detail. So can Turiya state talk about? What I think, and that I can explain from the model I have given, that is, these are the states you get, wake, non-REM, REM. They are interconnected. Then, but how can a state stay without a background? What I am saying, Turiya state is the background state. Now that remains suppressed, on which all these wake, non-REM, REM keeps on waking. That is a simple model what we are. Somewhere with practice, when Turiya can be brought out with the others getting subsided, probably that is what meditation, probably that is what one thinks are coming. Now why am I saying this? As I said, philosophy is first. First the thought process. Can we do it? Let it be rejected. But first the model has to be there. If there is no water, even if it is thirsty, I cannot drink anything. But if the water is there first thing, then it is whether it is pure or impure or something. So first thing, a model is required. Now, this is how then there's a step to work with. With this I would finish with my talk. Therefore, I say, masking and unmasking of expressions defines different states. And that is how the brain would work. And this is what is need of the hour. So this is the hypothesis which can be tested. All prevailing basal substrate could be Turiya, on which all other states play and get expressed. So, this is my concluding remark in one of my editorials, that is, never sleep on sleep and don't lose sleep on lost sleep. Why sleep when sleepy, lest you become slippery? And this is a picture from my campus. Those who have not gone, please do visit. And it's my proud privilege to acknowledge the help. The left side, those are the people who have finished their PhDs, where they are located now, including the first PhD who is full professor in UCLA, and the others which are continuing. And the right side, people who are working with me at the moment. And the funding comes from all taxpayers' money. I am grateful for them. And I am grateful to the animal lives who have sacrificed for our benefit. Thank you very much.
For the nice presentation. I think we go for question and answers afterwards, after
Sure.
all the talks that has been established as a rule yesterday.
Thank you for your patience.
Then we move to our next speaker. It's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Shimi Lordkar. He's a Tibetan medical practitioner, currently serving in a clinic in of the Tibetan Medical and Astrological Institute. She served as a resident doctor for 4 years and also worked in publication department with a team recruited for translating the fundamental text of Tibetan medicine into English. She regularly delivered lectures on Tibetan medicine, and she's deeply committed in the promotion and preservation of the unique Tibetan tradition and culture, specifically Tibetan medicine. So I'm looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
I would like to begin with the paying homage to Medicine Buddha. Dayata Om Begadze Maha Begadze Razaya Sumungate Yasoha. Hello and Tashidelek everyone. I feel very privileged to be here and be a part of this presentation and this conference. And for this I would like to thank all the organizer team and especially Geshe Dojidamdula for inviting me here. When I left this auditorium yesterday and went back home, I was a little concerned whether or not if I could bring anything to this table, because whatever I was going to speak about was partially or mostly discussed already by the other presenters here. The Tibetan medical or the Tibetan Buddhism perspective of the Tibetan medicine by all the Geshe-las here, and the Tibetan medicine part by our Amchila here. So I hope I could bring something new. I'll try to bring something new and maybe put some light here on the talk about the traditional Tibetan medicine perspective on sleep and mental health. So I thought about giving you. I wasn't sure how many of you were aware of what Tibetan medicine is. I thought of giving you an overview, but I can also skip that, I guess, because it was discussed yesterday. But I would like to add that Tibetan psychiatry or Tibetan medicine can contribute largely to the psychiatry or the Western psychiatry, or treating the mental health or mental disorder or managing our mental health. Because in Tibetan medicine or Tibetan psychiatry, we are first taught about the fundamental concepts of mind, how mind is formed and what is the nature of mind, and how it is related to the body and its relationship body to the environment, mind and body relationship to the environment. And then we also talk about how the three humors come into the functioning and the survival and sustenance of the body. And we also talk about the causes and the conditions which can cause mental disorders. And by knowing the causes and conditions, how we can prevent mental disorders. So I think a lot of influence, our Tibetan medicine can influence a lot of things in the Western psychiatry as well. So let's start with the fundamental concepts of medicine in traditional Tibetan medicine. Let's begin with the nature of mind. Then we'll talk about the mind and body relationship, the concept of lung, mind and its relationship to the body. So what is the nature of mind? The nature of mind. The nature of mind in Tibetan medicine does not differ much from what it has been explained in the Tibetan Buddhism, which already our presenters has described in detail. So it is pure and aware and in Tibetan medicine, it has been described as the pure or blue sky. As we know that the natural mind is boundless and luminous and without any beginning. And it is like a pure crystal, or in Tibetan medicine we say it is like the clear blue sky. But as we are born with this ignorance, which obscures the inner light of wisdom of our mind, just like the these clouds obscuring the clear blue sky. So we talk about the mind and body relationship then, how mind and body is related. Geshe-la also talked about it yesterday. So there are few concepts of how mind and body are related. There are two major concepts actually. So there's one concept that believes that mind and body are not separate, and mind is just a byproduct of the brain. And after death, when we die, the mind disappears just like a rainbow. But this concept is totally in contradiction with what Tibetan Buddhism or Tibetan medicine believes. We believe that mind and body are separate. Just as, for example, a guest and a guest house, guest according to its convenience, comfort, or according to its financial status, chooses a guest house, stays there for a while, then leaves the guest house. Just like how the mind, according to its past karmic imprints and the negative afflictions, chooses a body to stay. And then after staying for a while, and when the physical form of the body degenerates or dissolves, it leaves the body in pursuit of another form of the body. So mind is the continuum of life. It does not end. It doesn't have a beginning, and it does not have an end. And mind is also, as we learned earlier in our presentations, that mind is also the creator of everything. Mind is the creator of all happiness and all sufferings. Or medically, we can say that mind is the creator of all well-being, and the mind is the creator of all disease. And of course, it plays a vital role in maintaining the mental health. So here comes the concept of flow. Dr. Chambayendela discussed about it briefly yesterday, but for you who are unaware of what the theory of the three humors, according to Tibetan medicine, there are three humors in our body. Similarly, like we have in Ayurveda, the three doshas. So the three humors in our body are like Lung, Tipa, and Pekin. As we are born with the three negative afflictions, we are also born with these three humors in our body, and we need these three humors in our body to sustain our life and to function from day-to-day life. For example, first the Lung humor, which is mainly responsible for the respiration and the nervous systems. The nervous system functions in our body. It is the neutral energy. We say that it is the neutral energy in our body. And then we have the Tipa energy. The Tipa energy is the heat energy in our body. And like Dr. said, that it is located in the middle part of the body, and it is mainly responsible for all the digestion, all this, we are able to digest food, and the complexion of the skin. These are all responsible because of the Tipa energy. And then lastly, we have the Pekin energy, which is the cold energy. Pekin energy is mostly responsible for the lymphatic system and the fluid in our body. So we need all these three energies in our body. But in Tibetan medicine, we call them the three Nyepas, or the three falls. Because when these three humors are in balance, they promote good health, good mental and physical health. But when they are when they are imbalanced, or disharmonious balances, the dynamic balance is disturbed, then we have a disease. So it is very important to maintain this balance in order to have a good mental and physical health. we can see here that it is also one of the concepts of the Tibetan medicine that every living things and non-living things in this microorganism and macroorganism, all these things are made of the 5 elements, the Panch Bhuta in Hindi. The lung energy manifests itself in the air element, and it has the characteristic of rough, light, cold, subtle, hard, and mobile. The lung can be roughly translated as the wind. So, lung is the main energy responsible for all the mental disorders. And like I said, it is responsible for the physical and mental activities. And because it acts as the medium between the body and mind, it sustains life. Then we will talk about the lung, body, and mind relationship. So we have mind, we have body. So we need to connect. We need something to connect these two. And the lung comes in there, the subtle lung comes in there. So the mind in Tibetan medicine, we say it is a crippled man. It's a crippled man. No, a crippled man, and yes, a crippled man, and the lung is a horse. So the lung, the mind rides the lung, and it can travel all throughout the body. So this is how how the brain, sends all these messages to our body, and we feel the message is sent back to our mind. So the lung does these functions. So if we have a healthy body, it can affect the lung, then it will affect the mind, and conversely, if you have a good mental health, then it will affect the good the good the circulation of the lung, and that will result in a good physical health. So lung, body, and mind are related like this. Now coming to the topic, the Tibetan medical approach to mental health. So, like I said, we have to know what is the causes. Tibetan medicine believe in knowing the causes of a disease. So it just do not give any preventive treatment for the disease, but it also provide a long-term or treatment which can root out the cause of the disease and manage a good health. So Tibetan medicine believes, like we have seen, it is very recent that we have seen an emphasis, a shift of emphasis in mental health. But Tibetan medicine, which is, I can say, the oldest written psychiatry, it has described that the health it has defined health in terms of a harmonious relationship between the body and mind. And when this harmonious relationship or the balance is disturbed, then it leads to disease. So first we have to, in order to prevent the mental disorder, we have to know the causes, what causes the disease. It is divided into two, the general cause and the specific cause. The general cause would be the ignorance. Many of our presenters here talked about it, so I will not go detail in it. So like we say, the ignorance, if you say that ignorance is the main cause of all disease and well-being. And in Tibetan medicine, we have given an example that as long as we are bound by this ignorance, we can never leave the samsara, or we will never be free from any sufferings, because just as like a bird, however he flies away or up above from the ground, he can never part from his shadow. So ignorance is the main cause of all the mental disorders as well as the physical disorders. So in this picture, we also show how the mental predisposition causes the all the diseases whether it be mental or physical. And it also shows how mind forms the body and how mind can affect the health and disease of our body. So the first would be the ignorant mind, which I said, the obscured mind, which gives rise to the ignorance, the self-governing ignorance. And this ignorance leads to the three mental poisons: attachment, anger, and close-mindedness. Attachment or desire is the prime cause of all the sufferings Desire or attachment may give you a temporary pleasure, but it leads to more sufferings like dissatisfaction, loss, and anger. So attachment is the prime cause of all physical and psychological lung disorders. Then the anger or the hatred, or in Tibetan we say the shedang. This is the mainly related to the state of being very anger or and hatred. So this is a very harmful state of mind being. So it can also being anger or being angry or being in hatred also not only harm yourself but can also harm others, and this results in the physical deeper disorders. Then lastly is the close-mindedness. Close-mindedness in Tibetan we call it timuk or lack of awareness or the obscured mind. So the close-mindedness cause the pagan disorders, the physical pagan disorders, and these three humors forms the body like we discussed earlier. Then we'll come to the specific causes. The specific causes of mental disorders in Tibetan medicine is divided into two, the internal and the external. In internal factors, we have the basic mental disequilibrium, which is the general psychological stress, which is caused by the loss of loved ones, loss of a job, or general work stress, and also excessive verbal or mental activities, excessive loss of blood, and then poor nutrition also contribute in that. And then the second would be the three humors pathology. The three humors, as we talked about, is the lung, tipa, and pagan. The lung, the mental disorders caused by lung show symptoms like anxiety, overly talkative, restlessness. Lung, like I said, can be roughly translated to wind. So like wind, it is very mobile. So a person with a mental lung disorders shows very restlessness and talkative and irritability. They show signs of irritability. And a psychosis caused by lung exhibits cycles of, what do we call the bipolar, this thing. Shows cycles of very excitability, and then they are very withdrawn or sullen, So these are the two internal factors, and then we have the external factors. The first would be the evil spirits. Evil spirits in Tibetan medicine is classified into 18 types. These evil spirits possess an individual, and it transforms the it enters the body, mind, and speech of a person, and it transforms the characteristic nature of the possessed, and they adopt the characteristic nature of whichever the evil spirit is possessing. And the intoxication. If I give you an example of evil spirit, so there are certain, we call this the Sanskrit Haje, I think Haje. So there is one evil spirit called Haje, and this is a particular evil spirit for God. And when this evil spirit enters our body or possesses an individual, a person who cannot even can speak God's language, or some evil spirit when enter our body, they can speak or Sanskrit as well when a person does not speak Sanskrit too. So these evil spirits transform all the body, mind and speech of a person. And then we have intoxication. Intoxication means it is a toxic when we consume, shows symptoms of psychopathology, and in this it is also all the incompatible foods or unwholesome foods. These are also related in this intoxication. So we know now what are the causes of the mental disorders, but in Tibetan medicine we say that without a factor, the cause cannot lead to any disease. Like it is said in Gushi. The Gushi is the fundamental test of Tibetan medicine, and it dates back to 2,500 years ago. It has stated that it is very important to understand that all disorders arise because of the condition triggering the cause, and they cannot be any consequence from the cause alone without any contributing factor. Therefore, one must avoid contributing conditions of all disorders. So we have to know what the factors are, the factors which triggers the mental disorders. The first is the diet, and then lifestyle, and the psychological factors, and the evil spirits again. So Tibetan medicine emphasizes lots on diet and lifestyle. It is involved in the prevention of a disease. So Tibetan medicine mainly is a preventive medicine. So to prevent any disease, we recommend or we advise the patient to take care of their diet and lifestyle. So, and if that doesn't happen, and if the individual gets a disease, then we also ask the patient to treat whatever disorder they have through diet and lifestyle. And if that does not happen, then we give medicine, and if that does not happen, we give the external therapies. So first the diet and lifestyle, then psychological factors, and then evil spirit. Like I said, the diet. In Tibetan Buddhism, it has been emphasized that the diet should be taken as, the food should be taken as medicine, and not like what we do now these days, like gorge upon foods like that. So the right food should be taken in the right amount at the right time for the right body. So by right body, I mean that there are 7 types of body: psychosomatic body, or we call it the 7 constituents. So each individual is different. Normally we hear our Western doctors saying you should have raw vegetables or raw salads. But our Tibetan doctors advise against it, because raw salads or raw vegetables or certain food, we cannot generalize a certain food for everyone, because each individual is different, and whatever is good for me cannot be good for Dr. Hussain, and whatever is good for Dr. Hussain cannot be good for me, because we are each individual, and our treatment or our diet and lifestyle should be according to that. Like for example, lung, which has the nature of cold and subtleness and lightness. If the person eats more of a cold food or more of a diet having coarse potencies, it might aggravate the coarseness and the lightness of the body, and this will result in aggravating the lung in our body. So, and like in Tipa, if a person has a more dominant Tipa, if the person takes more of a spicy food or a hot food, then it will aggravate more heat in the body, and then it will aggravate the Tipa disorders. Likewise in Pagan is the cold energy. So if, like I said, if I'm a Pagan person, I eat lots of raw salads or sweets, then what happens is you have more of a Pagan person here, or Pagan disorder, resulting in Pagan disorder. So you should eat and drink according to your own constitution. So it is very important to know that what type of person you are first, and then you should act or you should eat according to that. Especially because the lung is lung is always involved in the mental disorders. You have to take care, especially take special care in the diet for the lung disorders. For lung disorders, it is advisable to take warm-natured foods, oily and nutritious foods that pacifies the lung, such as sesame oil, bone soup, meat broth. If you're vegetarian, you can have like vegetable soup, and then nettle, onion, and garlic, and chang, which is the Tibetan beer. And we have seen that a lot of us having coffee these days. So coffee has the coarse and light potency, which aggravates more lung inside. So I'm here. I've recently moved here in Delhi in the Nizamuddin branch clinic. So Nizamuddin branch clinic of Mensikang. I'm sorry, I didn't talk about it earlier. The Mensikang is the Institute of Tibetan Medical and Astrology, and the headquarters of it was first established in the 1916 in Lhasa in Tibet by the 13th Dalai Lama. Then it was re-established in 1961 by the 14th Dalai Lama in Dharamsala. So we have our headquarters back in Dharamsala, and we have 57 branches all around India. So in Nizamuddin, it is the branch clinic where I work now. It has been only 3 months since I came here, and in this short period of time, I've seen a lot of patients. A lot of patients comes to us with these all having a mental problems, or one or the other. The next patient would be having problem with sleep or insomnia. So I see it is very common in the mental disorder, the mental illness is very common in Delhi, I guess. Maybe because of the hectic lifestyle. I'm sorry, I was drifting. So I will get back to the point. So yes, I was talking about the dietary intervention. So you should take less coffee and strong tea to pacify the lung. And then approaching sleep, which is one of the topic here. So sleep is a process needed to withdraw the constant involvement in gross level activities, because it gets too strenuous, to constantly experience the gross level activities. It needs to experience the subtle level experience, and the quality of sleep depends on the dominance of the three nepas and the stages of life. So if you are a pagan person, you can enjoy a sleep. You are lazy and enjoy a sleep. But a lung and Tipa person can have difficulty in sleeping and can also suffer from insomnia. So good sleep is really needed for good mental health, and lack of sleep can activate or can develop the rough characteristic of the body, which results in the lung disorders. And this can, when the lung disorder is aggravated, it can result into the mental disorders like anxiety, depression, and all these mental disorders. Developing mental immunity. I won't talk much about it because it's from the Buddhist perspective and it has been discussed earlier. But going briefly in this, for developing a physical immunity, to have a good health, we develop the physical immunity. But to have a good mental health, it is also very important to develop a good mental immunity, and that can be done through practicing to heal these negative emotions or negative afflictions like greed, anger, and delusion through practices of Buddhism like meditation on contemplation or contemplating on impermanence, and developing compassion and developing wisdom. And there are other practices like thinking positively and taking spirituality over materialism. And the first thing would be, I almost tell my patient that you should accept disease. You cannot go away from that. You should accept disease, and that might give you a little help in understanding the disease and in reducing the pain of the disease. So, and the 5 things we should reduce: self-centered attitude and worry. We have patients coming, a lot of patients coming who are saying like, when I ask them to, when I tell them to, tell them that you should not worry and repeat the words of His Holiness that if you have a problem, do not worry. If you have a problem, do not worry, because if it can be solved, then why worry? And if it cannot be solved, then why worry at all? So, but then what my patient says, no, I don't think. मैं नहीं सोचता, मैं नहीं करता. It happens, It happens. My brain works like that. मैं नहीं सोचता है, दिमाग चलता है. So we mean that it means that they don't think, but their brain is working. So it was interesting for me, and I would like to discuss with the other Buddhist, from the Buddhist perspectives as well as the Western perspectives, that if that is possible, if a brain, if a person can think, if thoughts can come without the brain thinking about it. Sorry. Yes, I have reached the end of my presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being a great listener. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we now move to our final speaker, Dr. Anita Rani. After completing her medical education in India, she went to New York and did her residency in internal medicine and as well her PhD in immunology from the New York Medical College, followed by a fellowship in allergy and clinical immunology. She currently practices and teaches in Goa. Yeah, I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Let me begin by thanking Geshe-la, who is not here, and Dr. Sion for giving me the opportunity to speak here. After this day and a half of being in the rarefied domain of psychology, consciousness, mind, neuroscience, sleep, I'm going to bring you down to the conventional domain of the body, the gross domain, the mundane domain of the body as a physician. So that's my job. So let me begin with the first slide. It's called, what I'm going to speak about today is psycho-neuroimmunology. We doctors have a very bad habit of making things very long and very complicated, and most people don't understand these words. So let me break it down for you. Psycho is a mind, and that's what you heard yesterday from some fabulous presentations. Neuro is the central nervous system and the endocrine system. Again, you heard some amazing presentations yesterday. And immunology is what I'm going to speak about from my side, right? So technically, if you call it in a colloquial word, it's mind-body connection. Up to 15 years ago, if not even 15 years ago, but 5 years ago, if I went and spoke about mind-body connection or psychoneuroimmunology in a medical conference, I would be dismissed completely. They would have said New Age, hippie, all kinds of stuff. But today it is almost completely mainstream medicine. So that's how much we have changed from dogma to some extent to accepting that the mind and the body are connected. So if you look at the definition of psychoneuroimmunology, is the investigation of the bidirectional linkages between the central nervous system, the endocrine system, and the immune system, and the clinical implications of these linkages. Please look at the word bidirectional and please remember it for the rest of my presentation. So it's not only the mind that does things to the body, but the body also has an effect on the mind. So now there are pretty clear connections between the physiology that underlies the emotional states and the immune system. Now these are either direct neural connections that we'll see, or the endocrine connections again that we will see. my presentation will be divided into 3 parts, but I wasn't sure who my audience really were. So first I'll talk about what the immune system is. The second is the functions of the immune system. And third, the effect of psychological events on the immune system. So these all of you might have known. If you go for a blood test, you'll find they'll do a complete blood count and you'll have the white blood cells or the leukocytes. These are divided into polymorphogranulocytes, which are neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils. Lymphocytes, which are really important, which are T cells, helper T cells, B cells and the natural killer cells. And then you have the last group of cells called monocytes, which are macrophages or dendritic cells. So this is the basic classification of the immune cells. Where do they live? They live in lymph nodes, vessels, bone marrow, thymus and spleen. We also have them in the GI tract. The GI tract to protect you from foodborne pathogens. In the respiratory tract to protect you from airborne pathogens. So what is the function of the immune system? The function of the immune system is basically twofold, two majorfold. One is to differentiate self from non-self. And the second is to look for the foreign that comes into your body, which could be viruses, bacteria, toxins, or even your own cells that have altered to form tumor cells, and remove these. So find them and destroy them. That is the second function. Now, the immune system has to remain right in the middle. There has to be a really amazing balance between this. If it goes to one extreme, it recognizes self as not self, then you'll end up with autoimmune disease. And if it goes the other extreme and does not recognize foreign as foreign, then you end up like with HIV and AIDS, with all kinds of diseases. So it has to remain right in the middle. And today my presentation is going to keep saying how much the body has to be in balance to avoid disease, which is very similar to what Dr. Dolga said. So how does the immune system work? So there is basically the first line defense, which is a non-specific defense. So something comes in, the macrophage picks it up, it digests it, and it shows it to the T cell. You have also the natural killer cells. Now this is also a first line defense, and this is also a non-specific defense. So here the T cell goes and catches a cell with viruses in it and then releases toxins into it and kills the cell. This is pretty simple. It comes in, you kill it, that's it. So now the second line defense is really, really, really important. It's a specific defense. So a baby gets the entire immunological memory from its mother. So the mother, all that she has seen in her life, she transmits to the baby during pregnancy. So not only her memory, her mother's memory, her grandmother's memory, all that is transmitted to the baby. But the most amazing thing is when the baby is born, then when she's breastfeeding the baby, now whatever the baby sees new in the environment, the baby's immune system talks to the mother's immune system and says, I haven't seen this. And the mother produces the antibodies in her body and then she gives it via breast milk to the baby. And this is why we are so insistent that breast milk is to be given to the baby for at least 6 months to a year, if not more. So this priming or pre-programming towards certain antigens help when, I'll show you in the next slide, but then you have, in this you have the T cells. The T cells are divided into two, the cytotoxic ones that I showed you before, and the helper T cells. These helper T cells are like the conductor of an orchestra. So what happens now in this cartoon is that you see the phagocyte picks up the bacteria or virus that comes in, it digests it, it shows it on its surface to the T cell, and the T helper cell gets activated. Now this one is the main cell, so keep this T helper cell in mind. This is the one that's killed in HIV. Okay? Now you have the B cells. The B cells have a completely different function. So the B cells produce a lot of antibodies that coat the virus or the bacteria that comes into your body, and it makes it identifiable by that macrophage. So here we are. So here's a B cell. It has the various receptors on it that it got from its pre-programming. So now you have the bacteria that's come in, and then just see, it's going to recognize it, but it's not going to do anything else. Now the T helper cell has to come and activate the B cell. It's so incredibly interdependent. You can't have one without the other. So this T cell comes in and it says, okay, now you can start producing more antibodies. So then the B cell divides into two types of B cells. One, it produces a large amount of antibodies for that bacteria, so the macrophage can catch it and remove it. And the second it does is it produces a memory T cell. So now the memory B cell sits in the body, and so the next time this bacteria comes in, there's a rapid amount of antibodies produced right away. So all this works together, and if you remove one part of this, the immune system collapses. So like Acharya Nagarjuna said, our lives are like a flame, candle flame, with a huge storm going around. So to be an immunologist is to actually see that, to amazingly see how fragile we are and how one small thing can cause us not to be here, as you can see with HIV. So how do psychological events affect the immune system? Now that's the main part of the presentation. So basically you have three types. You can have classical conditioning, the activation of the HPA axis. I promised to explain this. Activation of the sympathetic nervous system. There are three ways. Now what is classical conditioning? I'm sure all of you know, even if you're not science students, about Pavlov's reflex, right? A dog is given food and the bell is rung, and then after a few days when you ring the bell, the dog salivates and thinks about food. So similarly here, college students were taken and they were given sharbat. Sharbat is actually ice lolly in America. It's not sharbat like in sharbat here, It's an ice thing. And that's called the conditioned stimulus. And along with that, they were injected with norepinephrine, which is called the unconditioned stimulus. And then after 6 days, they checked to see what was happening. And then they found that when the person ate sharbat, the NK cells, the natural killer cells went up because the norepinephrine caused the natural killer cells to go up. And the saline injection didn't do anything, and eating the sharbat alone did nothing. So your immune system can be conditioned by stress or psychological events to produce certain immune modulators. This is called an HPA axis. I said activation of the HPA axis. This is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal cortex axis. This produces cortisol. Cortisol is called the stress hormone. It's a very, very important hormone, but we'll explain further why it's a problem. So this one, the previous speakers who spoke, I think Venerable Pandron spoke about, and also Dr. Anita spoke about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system. The sympathetic system is activated by stress. So you see the eyes will dilate, the lungs, the bronchi dilate, there's blood sent to the peripheries. This is called the fight or flight syndrome. So if you're stressed, it's really wonderful to look at your own body and see if you're stressed. If you just close your eyes for a few minutes, you can tell. For example, right now I know my pulse rate is very high and my blood pressure is high as well, I'm pretty sure. So I know that I'm stressed, right? So this is the this is the sympathetic nervous system. So now, how does this all work? Now stress causes a dysregulated cortical response. So either there is too little of cortisol or too much of cortisol. So when you have, small amount of stress or short-term stressors, you have an increase in the cortisol. But if you have very long chronic stress, the cortisol goes down. Now, if any of you have asthma, you will know that you always have asthmatic attacks at 3 o'clock in the morning. And for me, as a physician who deals with that all the time, I'm conditioned now to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning regardless, because I know my emergencies always come at 3 o'clock in the morning. So that's an example of conditioned response, And depressed patients have a blunted cortisol effect. They just don't produce enough. So we'll talk more about that. If you look at the immune functioning on the x-axis, and you see how a moderate, initially it's somewhere in the middle, and a moderate stressor will increase the immune system because that's what it's supposed to do. But if the stress remains for longer, the entire immune functioning goes down. Now, what happens if stress causes cortisol levels to go up? Cortisol suppresses the immune system. That's what's going on. The lymphocyte numbers go down, the weight the immunomodulators go down, everything goes down. So if you take a lab stressor and you take a couple of college kids and give them mental arithmetic, which is really stressful for most people unless you are very, very bright with math, you know. So that causes the NK cells to go up, right? But if you have exam stress, and now is really, really important because examinations are going on longer and longer. The 10th standard exam now goes over 1 month, you know, as opposed to 1 week as when I was in 10th grade. So this long-term stress will reduce the immune system, and that's why in March you see a lot of colds and coughs coming in among school kids because the immune system has gone down. So if they have the herpes virus within them latent, it will activate. And this is the wrong time to take a vaccination if you ever want to take a vaccination. Because if you take a vaccination when your immune system is down during exams, it will not work very well. Okay, so this is a very practical point. So what does stress do? So stress causes an increased heart rate and blood pressure. It produces stress hormones like cortisol, which causes the immune system to go down. And it disturbs the digestive system. It disturbs the digestive system. As you all know, when you're stressed, you have loose bowels, for example, because all the blood is taken away from the digestive system and taken to the periphery so you can run away from whatever is causing the stress. So this brings me to a very, very important next part called inflammation. What is inflammation? Inflammation is when you have a wound, you have certain cells coming there, right? And that heals the wound. So the T8 cells I asked you to remember, the T helper cells, they produce what is called cytokines. The cytokines talk to the other cells. I told you that they regulate the behavior of all other cells. So they talk to the other cells. Now in cytokines, you have two kinds. You have pro-inflammatory cytokine and you have an anti-inflammatory cytokine. Again, the body has to be in complete balance. A healthy body is always balanced. So when you have a pro-inflammatory cytokine that's produced, when you have a wound, very quickly the anti-inflammatory cytokine, which is IL-10, is produced so that it shuts off the inflammatory response. And this is what it is. But if you leave the pro-inflammatory cytokine on, the switch on, that leads to a whole lot of disease, and that's what we'll look at. So if you look at brief stressors, they will cause an increase in pro-inflammatory cytokines for a short time. And then you have the anti-inflammatory cytokines coming in. But if you have a long stress, chronic stress, it keeps the pro-inflammatory cytokines always on. But we have to be sensible. We cannot say that every systemic inflammation is because of environmental stressors and psychological stressors. I mean, of course, there are other causes, but this is a pretty important cause. Now, when it stays on, what happens? You get a whole lot of inflammatory diseases. You get rheumatoid arthritis, you get inflammatory bowel disease. Like Dr. Dolkar said, I have a lot of patients from Delhi that come to Goa, and a lot of them have stomach-related issues. And this is because of the stress that they have. And heart disease now, of course, the arteries get inflamed. And so it produces, there's a production of a molecule called CRP, C-reactive protein. So now we're looking at C-reactive protein, and if it's high, we know that you're very prone to heart disease. And C-reactive protein is increased when there's inflammation, and that's how this is looked at. Certain cancers, Alzheimer's disease, these are some of the examples of inflammatory diseases. Now what about depression? Dr. Anita yesterday said 1 in 7 patients have depression, and it seems to be a pretty increasing condition. So you see these inflammatory diseases are also associated with depression. Now, of course, by themselves, they could be associated with depression because if you have heart disease and you have other rheumatoid arthritis, the pain can cause the depression. But we have also noticed that depressed patients have a large amount of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So, if it is the case, is it the cause? Is the inflammatory disease a cause of the pro-inflammatory cytokine? Or is the pro-inflammatory cytokine the cause of the inflammatory disease? So let's have a look. It's easy to do, right? So you inject the pro-inflammatory cytokines into normal subjects, and you find that they manifest symptoms of depression. So they will have fatigue, apathy, helplessness, and all kinds of things. Even in animal models, it causes depression-like syndromes. So if you give them antidepressants, which of course, like Venerable Pauron said, we don't want to do for all patients, but in case they're already on them, you can see the pro-inflammatory cytokines coming down. And then if you take them and put them outside the antidepressants on an in vitro dish, you see that the pro-inflammatory cytokine also comes down. So in science, we always have to look at it in multiple ways. We cannot, especially with the human body, we cannot just make a statement based on one result. So you have to look at it in very, very many ways. So the question is still, is depression related to inflammation? These studies are not enough. We really have to look at more. Now, immune system and cancer. This is a really controversial topic. So most people believe, lay people believe that, the immune system not functioning well or not looking for the cancer cells is what leads to cancer. But T cells and NK cells definitely do kill tumor cells in vitro, but the current thinking in medicine is that the immune system plays a larger role in controlling metastasis than initiating the tumor. And so it's more of an issue of control rather than the cause. Now, if you take a stressed mouse with ovarian cancer, and you can see that the tumors grow and it spreads much faster. So if you take the hormones from a stressed animal and then you put them on tumor cells outside the body, the tumor cells grow really, really fast. So that gives us pretty good information that the stress hormones from the mouse is causing this. Now you do the opposite. You give it a beta blocker. You put a beta blocker. The beta blocker blocks the norepinephrine that is released in stress, and then you find that it stops. So this is pretty clear that if you are stressed and if you already have a malignancy, the metastasis can be increased. But again, we cannot just take this and say it's the case for everybody. It's not always the case for everyone. That's the problem with medicine. We take a couple of studies and we just generalize it to everybody, and that's not something we can do. But we can definitely say that this is one of the things that can cause an increase of metastasis. So now let me come to the new frontiers. This is a really amazing, exciting time for immunology with the gut. So the stressed gut and the depressed brain. So now we're going the other way. Remember I said bidirectional. So not only that we knew before that the depressed brain causes a bad gut, but now we are saying the other way, that a depressed gut can also a stressed gut can also cause a depressed brain. So if you look at the mucosal immunal tissues, that's the largest place for the immune system to come in contact with external antigens. Food, wheat especially, milk, things like that, it comes in contact and there can be a lot of allergic reactions, and that can also trigger a lot of problems. So there's a great amount of interest in this field currently. Now, this is for my medical presentation, so it says, do your patients have the guts to be happy? Now, we can just say, do you have the guts to be happy? So, like I said, that the other way around, the effect of stress on the digestive system has been well documented. Now, what about the reverse? So you find that a gut with a pathogenic bacteria, or a gut that has lost its ecological balance. Again, balance. The word keeps coming back again and again. The gut that's lost its ecological balance, it starts to cut down on tryptophan, because tryptophan is an amino acid that's produced usually in the gut with a bad ecological balance. But it also cuts serotonin, breaks down serotonin. Serotonin is a feel-happy hormone, right? So definitely it contributes to depressive and anxiety states. So I'm going to finish my presentation even before you press that bell once. So to take home message, stress does make you sick. Please take care of your gut. And take a moment to be aware of your body and its reactions. If you do, you don't need to go to anyone to find out if you're stressed. You can tell yourself if you're stressed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this nice presentation. We have time for some short questions. Who wants to ask questions to the audience? Yes, please, in the back. Here, over there, yes.
To Professor Malik, you talked about the Fourier state very extensively question is that the fourth state, of course, we have in India the four dhams and the four Vedas and so on, and you can't disturb them with the fifth Veda and so on. So there is, what you said, a visionary state to the fourth state, the REM sleep state that you talked about. But we also find it in other cultures. For example, in Christianity, there were so many gospels. There were, I believe, 28. And one bishop, Irenaeus, reduced them to 4. So we have 4 gospels and we also have 4 evangelists. Yesterday she talked about the 4 noble truths. And we have the 4 Khalifas in Islam. I could go on and on with this. But would you think that this is all connected, these visionary states, these revelatory states, are they all somehow connected to the REM state? Thank you.
Well, see, first thing, please forgive me for my apology that I do not know too many of these philosophies. All right? That is the first thing one has to accept. Now, what we have to understand, experimental science wants to know what is existing which we do not know. Has anything been created? No. Now, what I was trying to say, we talk about REM sleep state and then we connect it with dream state. Are they identical? To me, no. Most likely they are independent, they overlap. That is what in detail will be there in that 3rd chapter, what I have written from the experimental point of view. Now, why is it necessary? Great philosophers in the yesteryears, be it from any religion, that comes. So don't worry about all those. They have talked about philosophy. Now, all these Buddhists or some Christianity or any, Mohammedan or Vedic, the great people have talked about how to cure and what is life, what is normal. In that sense, with evolution of knowledge, you have tried to find basis to understand by this mind. So, I am not distinguishing any of them, because when you try to interpret, that also depends on the existing knowledge by that person. So, what I was trying to say, if we have to say so, possibly our philosophers, humanities philosophers, I am not saying which religion or what not, they have given something as a philosophy. Our job is to try to explain. Now, in order to explain with some evidence, we have to start with. For that, you need something to start to work. If it is not, how do you do? This is a workable, testable hypothesis. Now, whether you reject it, you do it, but for that you have to prove it. I was saying that. Neither I am contesting, nor I have the guts to contest, because I am not that knowledgeable. My knowledge is so limited. Did I answer your question? No? Okay, then.
Yes. Yes, I have a question. I think the lady who was the expert in immunology was kind of rounding out the program beautifully, because lately I learned that there is a second brain, which is considered the gut. And so it's maybe almost equal in value to the brain itself. And there are myriad connections. Also, you mentioned serotonin, which I know is a kind of a waking up hormone. Is it a waking up?
No, serotonin is a happiness hormone. It makes you feel,
yes,
serotonin
which
is
also
right.
seems to play a part in Dr. Malik's investigations in sleep. So I was wondering, could you possibly speak, do you know more about this brain, how it functions as a second brain?
Yes, that's the current, the most important research that's going around. And the second brain, if you know, earlier we used to say gut instinct. Remember, we would say that. Yeah. So the lymph tissues in the gut that lines the gut, that's the reason why it's called the second brain. There are other reasons, of course, but they say that there's also a lot of cognitive function that's happening from the second brain. So, but I'm not quite sure how it works, because there's a lot of research right now as we speak going on about it.
I have a question. I would like to address to both the Tibetan medicine presentation and the neuropsychosis. You see, a lot of factors and parameters have been mentioned about lifestyle and stress. And that they cause a whole series of aberrations, which are corrected either by Tibetan medicine or by various allopathic or other stuff. The problem is that the system that you are talking of, the premise that you are talking of regarding lifestyle and stress, pertains to a state of civilization and time which was quite different 1,000 years ago and what it is today. Now, we talk of lifestyle and stress. 1,000 years ago, there was not a situation here in India where, for instance, people had to go abroad and go around the world and have a diplomatic relationship and other corporate relationships, particularly, where a lot of stress and lifestyle changes are inevitable. People tell me that your lifestyle should be an important factor. 1,000 years ago and today, are totally different. As a corporate chairman 1,000 years ago, I didn't have to go and attend 10 parties per day where 20 other people are trying to cheat my country, and I had to stop that and save India. Today, 1,000 years later, that situation is real. So therefore, isn't it necessary that we go and change the paradigm shift and then say changing of lifestyle and other factors which cause stress in others are to some extent inevitable? And in that circumstances, what should be the approach? Do you have to change your medical systems, or do you have to change your whole approach to human and well-being and wellness?
Thank you very much. Would you like to start with the answer?
Okay, if I get the question right, you're asking if, according to the hectic lifestyle, we should change the paradigm of the lifestyle and diet. So, my answer would be, now these days, if you have noticed that His Holiness, when he gives teachings, or especially when he gives the initiation, especially. So we have some initiations when you have to accept all these Genyeduma. Then he normally, actually it's in the text that we should not drink alcohol and we should not tell lies. And these were all abandoned, or they were strict restrictions upon them. But now, according to the lifestyle, according to today's world, he has given us little, leniency. And when he gives the initiations, he asks that don't drink too much alcohol, just a little bit, not until you get drunk. So I would also, when I see my patients, I also ask them, take little bit. I don't say that do not take this or do not take this. I ask them to say little bit or take it in moderation. Thank you.
The question that I have, my question is towards Dr. Gulmohar. In fact, I've been a patient of Tibetan medical doctors for many years. So my question is that I don't remember any doctor, Tibetan doctor, advising us to be vegetarian. In fact, there was, and as you said, the doctorate, the teaching of the Tibetan medicine somehow is grounded in compassion, grounded in Buddhist teaching. So my question is there any possibility, is this the basic principle that people should be suggested or to be advised to be non-vegetarian? Is it a basic principle of the Tibetan medicine, or is just the idea, opinion of only one doctor? So from your point of view, what would you suggest? Would you suggest vegetarian to go more spreading, or you still advise non-vegetarian? Is my question to you.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Like I discussed in my presentation earlier, that a diet cannot be generalized to everyone. And I would of course suggest or advise a person with cheaper constitution, which is the heat, which is more related with heat. Of course, he can be a vegetarian, but for a lung person and for a severe lung person, meat should be taken in moderation as well, because the meat has the potency of warm and nutritious, which pacifies the lung inside our body. So I would suggest that do not be a vegetarian. Of course, I'm not asking against it, but yes, we have to eat. If you are being vegetarian, then you have to have other options for to combat that. Being like a diet having more warm and nutritious foods like milk, for instance, for tofu, which can replace the meat. Thank you.
Dr. Dolkar.
One last question.
Dr. Dolkar.
In the back.
You mentioned, you spoke about diseases that are caused by spirits that invade the body. And my question to you is, what are the symptomatic causes that allow for such invasions to happen? And how can one protect themselves from such invasions?
Thank you. I think I've raised a lot of questions among the participants. So, to answer your question, we normally say that to prevent that, so we call this a degenerative era, the era we are living in. And in this era, we have people, individuals fighting against each other in the name of, religion or caste or anything. And then we also, another cause of evil spirit is also, when we build a building, you can see all the buildings coming up in Delhi. So when we build this building, we believe in Tibetan medicine, or of course in Tibetan Buddhism, we believe that there are certain protectors living under the ground or living under the trees or something. So when these protectors are disturbed, they get angry and then they possess this thing. And another factor would be if you indulge in sexual activities in front of the sacred images, and of course or generally if you are timid or if you are grief-stricken normally, the evil spirits think that if they are more accessible, you are more accessible to the evil spirits to enter.
And so what is the method of reinforcing or protecting yourself?
Okay, of course, to have encouragement, to be courageous enough to build your, like I said, the mental immunity, to be courageous enough, and to avoid all these things, like I said, to digging up the holes and picking up the deforestation we are doing right now, and all these non-virtuous acts. We can refrain from these. Yes, and another aspect is Tibetan medicine is also very related with Tibetan astrology. We also ask them to wear amulets, wear certain amulets, which will also help to abstain from the evil spirits.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. And I would like to thank all of the speakers of this morning's session for their wonderful talks, and you for your listening and for the discussion. And we'll have now the tea and coffee break outside. So thank you very much.
Thank you to all the panelists, and may I request Venerable Geshe Tenzin Amdala to present the souvenirs to the speakers. Professor James Husen. Dr. Birendra Malik. Dr. Anita Dudani ji. And Dr. Chimidora. Thank you.